Good morning, good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and do this. I feel like some of you are in the back of the room. That's okay. We're going to try to engage you so you wish you were closer up front. My name is Sofia Adrogue. Welcome. Thanks. I appreciate you moving up very much.
Yes, thank you.
Sofia Adrogue. My background, very, very briefly, I've been a business lawyer for 30 plus years, author, professor. Mid-career, I decided to do a 3-year program at Harvard Business School and care deeply about Texas. Have served on over 20 plus boards, including right now having the luxury very recently to work alongside Juliet Stipeche with the Gulf Coast Workforce Solutions, and specifically on her board that she is the ED of. Welcome. What I'd like to do very quickly is just, in essence, ensure that everyone just introduces themselves, says hello, and then I'll do some overview remarks. Give everyone about 5 minutes because you've got significant expertise here on a litany of levels. And we'll go, thank you. Dr. Walder, newly recent dean at University of St. Thomas. Welcome you, and if you'd like to just introduce yourself briefly, and then I'll commence opening remarks and do round robin.
Thank you, Sophia. Good morning. So my name is Dr. Nicole Walters. I'm the founding dean of the Colby School of Innovation and Professional Studies at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas. So I'm delighted to see some of my family back there, board member and our general counsel. But I'm the founding dean. This is our 4th year. We are delighted because it's our first 2-year program in a faith-based institution. And so we're excited because we saw the need for workforce development, skill setting, reskilling. And so I was asked to start this school. I started it, graduated my first group last May, and I'm going to graduate my second group with 75 students. So I started with 1, and now I have 236. So we're delighted. So thank you.
Well, that is formidable early momentum, and I can see the energy, and I congratulate you. Dr. Rodriguez with Elevate Latinas, and we are excited completely fortuitously. I went from not knowing this amazing doctor and coach and leadership advocate to now serving on a board with her, effective as of yesterday. Yeah. So we will get the luxury.
Absolutely. And we have so many great things to come.
Absolutely. Doctor, you've got the floor.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Melanie Rodriguez. I am CEO and leader coach at Elevate Latinas. So Elevate Latinas does executive coaching and leadership development for people and individuals and companies across the country, really. So for individuals, that looks like executive coaching, leadership development programming, and really honing in on what authenticity and maturity looks like within your role and how that builds into your leadership journey. For businesses, that looks like inclusion work, working with employee resource groups and working with leadership teams on creating inclusive environments that really support the diversity, the diversification of what C-suites look like. So welcome, and thank you for being here. We're gonna have some great conversations about workforce development and what retention and really building your organizational culture really looks like. So.
And Juliet, my fellow lawyer and fellow Rice graduate, you've got the floor.
Well, thank you very much. It's a privilege and an honor to join you here this morning. My name is Juliet Stipeche. I'm the executive director of the Gulf Coast Workforce Board, and I also help run the operating affiliates Workforce Solutions Gulf Coast. And so we have 28 career offices located across the 13-county region to serve you. In those offices, we have individuals that help with recruitment, training, opportunities, scholarship. We also provide funds for childcare scholarships as well. So we have a whole bunch of services that I'll be able to share some more information about today. But welcome, and we just look forward to your participation in this conversation as well.
And Juliet, thank you. To be cognizant, the budget that's overseen within her organization is north of $500 million. So not insignificant, the gravitas and opportunity. Indulge me at the outset, if nothing else, just so that you have, what's the impetus for some of the remarks? The nerd in all of us, a couple things, and I've asked the governor's office afterwards if there's a place that we can send these sources, if nothing else, so you have PDF access. In terms of, in preparation, a couple of things, I'm going to turn to questions. Be cognizant that there's a very interesting study that came out about a year ago called From Pandemic to Prosperity. Bipartisan solution to support today's small businesses. It is Goldman Sachs sponsors it, and then a bipartisan policy center. It's a think tank out of DC. I will say in terms of actual data, I found it quite interesting. Juliet brought to my attention something also quite interesting from Georgetown University, their School of Public Policy, and I like the title, After Everything. And let me say, so you've got pandemic to prosperity and after everything. And I would say just the titles alone are indicative of what we are seeing, what's transpiring. Another, I would say, if you want something facile, I found a Small Business Trends 2023 under Guidant, Guidant, and it just gives you a great spreadsheet in essence of where we are. And just to give us a sense of, although here there's a lot of female representation, males account for 75% of the small business owners in 2023. What's interesting also, that you've got about, in terms of how much economically is needed to start, and I'm trying to look at this information, you've got, as you know, as little as 50,000 to north of 500,000 and more. What's interesting also, and I would say a couple of big picture points as I turn to some of the statistics and the challenges and give the floor to them, is that there's no doubt that there are challenges. So if you within your own sector, whether it's an employee, an employer, a small business, a bank, there's no doubt for anyone to say all is truly well, I think people are not being thoughtful. The reality is there's no doubt there's been a great resignation. Some would say at some point there's been stagnation. I don't think they would say great stagnation. But that it's interesting because if you read the nomenclature, there's literally people oscillate between challenges, but there's always a sense of hope and opportunity. And I think in preparation for this conversation among all of us, I sense that. Yes. Whether in the leadership coaching, whether you in the education realm and all you're doing, and Juliet is what she's overseeing. There's no doubt that the pandemic and the aftermath upended many people's lives, and I would say also caused a seismic reassessment of all of our relationship to work. And thus the need to deal with it, right? Yeah. And so the reality is then how do you address the retention and otherwise? One of the things I found interesting, you know, we talk about small business, but the reality in terms of what the business is, we know this, but and this is actually Forbes 2023 statistics, 99.9% of businesses across the US are small businesses. So it is the economic engine. Nearly half of all US employees are employed by small businesses. This is interesting, over 8 out of 10 small businesses have no employees. So we may be speaking to the employee, the one-stop shop. But that doesn't mean you're not effective and deliver with a vengeance. Interesting, 16% of small businesses have 1 to 19 employees. And final statistic, I promise to stop, is small businesses have added 12.9 million jobs in the last 25 years. In terms of, as we address the business at hand, this will not surprise you, looking at what are the 4 areas that this Goldman Sachs study focused on, this think tank, from pandemic to prosperity. What are the 4 key areas that we need to address? Access to capital, workforce and competitiveness, retention and otherwise while we're here, procurement, government contracting, government and access, and the complexity of getting access to that procurement opportunity, and then childcare. So the access to capital is a perennial challenge. Here, though, we need to address the hiring and retention challenges, and that's why we're here. What I'd like to do is as follows. I'll start with Juliet, ask you one question. We'll all be mindful of each other's time because there's a lot of contribution that we can all make. I would say, in preparation, one of the questions that you were comfortable discussing is the key sectors driving job growth in Texas. And then, more specifically, talking about the workforce recruitment and retention strategies. How can they be adapted to these sectors?
So I think everyone, in terms of this introduction, the statistics are just staggering in terms of this area being so dynamic and weathering COVID and the pandemic as it did. And yet, as we sit here, we know that we had to really transform the way we do business and the way that we're interacting with the individuals that we want to hire, recruit, and retain. And it has had seismic shifts in terms of the delivery of systems, from the way our education system is also recruiting, retaining, and engaging students, to, just businesses trying to figure out how we can access many of the resources that can help empower us in our businesses. First and foremost, I want to say congratulations to everyone who is here today, because you are in a network that allows you to come into this circle to learn about resources, benefits, and supports. That, first and foremost, one of the critical components to success is, I remember one of the Texas Workforce Commissioners at a conference said, your net worth should be measured by your net work, right? And that comes even truer, in post-pandemic situations. And I think that, we know last year there were some predictions that that we would have a recession coming into the region, and yet we saw the resiliency of the economy. And by the end of the year, the prediction of 77,000 new jobs being generated just in this area alone has come to fruition, right? And then we also know that the predictions for next year, our economist Parker Harvey has predicted there's going to be 64,000 more jobs in this region. Dr. Ray Perryman, who's an economist for the state of Texas, said that there are 1,000 jobs created every single week in this region, but 1,500 people are needed to fill those jobs. So that comes into the very purpose of us sitting here today. It's like, we know that there's dramatic generation of positions, but how are we going to be able to have the people with the skills and the talent to be able to fill the workforce needs for our businesses here? And I, have been in this position since June of 2022, and I know that there has been a conscientious effort of trying to create alignment between the Texas Workforce Commission, the Higher Ed Coordinating Board, as well as the Texas Education Agency. The governor calls it the Tri-Agency Initiative. But it just demonstrates that we have to have all partners working together in order for us to be able to succeed. And that is because demographic changes, inclusive of the pandemic as well, are requiring us to rethink how we operate, how we train, how we upskill. And so those are different efforts and initiatives that are critically important to us. And then we also know that as the economy changes and industry changes, people need more education, more training, more skills to be able to successfully have the jobs that are being generated. More of the, I remember Professor Kleinberg would say, the good blue-collar jobs that required a high school education or less no longer exist. And then couple that with the challenges that are imposed as artificial intelligence starts playing its role and its game in this space and place. Locally in this region, some of the industries that continue to remain hot, of course, it's healthcare. We have about a gross number of jobs that remain unfilled because we need more nurses, healthcare providers, and allied healthcare providers. Education is another space and place where we dramatically need more help. And then you also look at, for a while, building and construction was so hot, but given some inflation challenges with loans, there's been a little bit of slowdown in building and construction. But you see manufacturing really taking a growth, information and technology being another space and place that requires a lot of growth. But I think the thing is, small businesses are the crux of the beneficial resiliency and sustainability of Houston's environment too. And in all of the studies that I've seen, small businesses are the ones that give people the opportunity to get on-the-job training, to get that first employment experience. And so as we talk further today, I'd like to say there are opportunities that we have at Workforce Solutions for on-the-job training, the development of apprenticeship programs, and the consideration of utilizing fundings in ways that makes sure that you train your workforce based on the skills and requirements that your business needs.
Juliet, thank you. A couple of things. And what we'll do is we'll make sure to give to the governor's office our contact information. And Juliet, really, and the resources she has, I've already asked her to be a point person, and we thank you. Among the things that I did not have the chance to say, Juliet not only was on the school board, HISD, but was the president of the school board, was also the first director of education for Mayor Turner, and was involved in launching Hire Houston and Be Well, Be Connected, and a litany of things. And I will say, as I look at this audience, and it just so happens, for women here, what's interesting is I think you and we We are also representative. Dr. Kleinberg, homage to Rice University there. St. Thomas, we'll give some good quotations. St. Thomas momentarily.
Oh, I know
and
you
U
will.
of H as well. But the reality is, what's interesting about opportunities, Dr. Kleinberg authored a book called The Prophetic City, Houston, as the prophetic city at the cusp of a changing America. Prophetic, i.e. from the concept of prophet, i.e. 40 years hence, the United States will look like what we look like today. And that is indicative of really the opportunity. As I will say as I turn it very quickly now to Dr. Rodriguez, one of the things that I would say is I want us to be cognizant of all this. I know this is not an AI panel, but we are also aware, and indulge me as I read, because the nerd in me does not want to get this wrong. Some futurists predict that automation will cause significant job losses. Some of us have heard this. Up to half of all jobs within 10 to 30 years. This is good news. So that's the problematic heads up. How are we going to pivot and be prepared? However, the research also shows that the automation primarily eliminates maybe specific jobs, tasks within jobs, rather than wiping out entire jobs. Now, that doesn't take away the fact that we have to be cognizant and thoughtful and ready. So we have to be able to utilize the automation, but ideally the good old-fashioned human touch. Seriously, leadership, you know, what is the brand, the special dessert that you bring to the table? As one of my favorite Harvard business professors would say. To that end, leadership coach, take it away. How are we gonna survive? Whether we are a one-stop shop and are the business, or we're trying to keep our people and friends.
Thank you for the question, because I think that you are spot on, right? We were at the Texas Workforce Commission conference last week, and AI was a hot topic in every panel, not just like next door, right? They're talking about social media and how AI really fits into that. And I think as small business owners, it's gonna be a massive game changer, because it gives you that springboard to do more and to be more within your business. So if you think about the nuances of all of the little things that you have to do as a small business owner, the reality is you are a one-stop shop. You do everything on your own, everything from billing to social media to creating content to doing all of the nitty-gritty work, whether you're a team of 1 or a team of 16, as you mentioned. But the reality of AI is that it's gonna help to conglomerate some of those tasks together so that you have the opportunity to be more of a think tank within your own space. The AI really gives you that opportunity to think creatively and to really springboard from all of the little things that you have to do into how can I really think critically, partner with other organizations, partner with technology, partner with people to really create even more massive solutions to the problems that I'm serving as part of
But doctor, let me say this, if you're a neophyte like I am, I usually ask my children to help me buy something online. The reality is, have you yet come across very specific programs or one-on-ones ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So the beauty of AI and the beauty of technology is that it evolves so quickly, right? So we went from ChatGPT, which was the very basic platform, to within months, ChatGPT has been out literally less than a year. And there are so many programs that you could download on your phone or that you can go to on a website that will do everything for you. Build out a PowerPoint, write me a script, help me edit this movie, create photos of me, all of the things, write a paper. And to your point, right, we've had this conversation around education of how does AI really take away from educational spaces? And I have seen everything from teachers and people within businesses saying, it's terrible, we shouldn't do it, it's taking away from our thinking capability, to the flip side of that is, how do we really use this to grow and to springboard into even more creatively thinking? So if you are a professor who can say, go have ChatGPT write a paper for you, everybody in the class is gonna ask it the same question and have it write a paper. Then let's come together and have a conversation about what does this really mean? What are all these different perspectives that the same AI is gonna bring us with the same question, and be able to really put in the nuances of who I am, because you get to really put in those specific things around how I ask questions about the things that are going on within my workspace or my environment that really make it me. And I think that that's, so for me, if I could take it back to leadership coaching,
Yes.
that's exactly what that's how I would frame being a leadership coach and having a conversation around leadership for anybody, right? Leadership is leadership. You can talk about the same fundamentals, the 5 dysfunctions of a team or some leadership framework, and you see it everywhere, but there's only certain people who actually do good with these frameworks, right? And that is because we all have different lived experiences. We all have different perspectives that we're bringing to the table. We all have different ways of working that we're putting into the spin of things. And AI is very similar, right? You have those different experiences or different nuances that are gonna help to evolve what that thinking looks like.
Well, and I would say, Doctor, thank you, because AI wasn't even the question. You pivoted beautifully to discuss it, because we need to, if I may, to the degree you have a couple of these specific sites or apps that you think are particularly good, I am going to ask, I promise, after, give us a week or so with the holiday season to come up with some good links. And what we'll do, and go ahead. Yes, Juliet.
Just one thing that I wanted to share, which surprised me, locally in the area, Houston Community College offers an AI degree. There are only 3 in the country. One is in Miami-Dade, one is in Maricopa County, known for, all the computer technology that comes from that region, and the other is right here in Houston. At the West Loop campus, they have a relationship with Google, Intel, Amazon. It's amazing, and it's right here locally, totally affordable and available for our community.
And query, even if you can't do a degree, because none of us may have that time as we're trying to keep our businesses going. Before I turn it to our dean at St. Thomas, Dr. Rodriguez, one quick question. One of the things that you said you'd be willing to talk about is, you said that there may be a personal experience you could share that's valuable. Getting it back to, we're talking about recruitment, retention, workforce, cognizant though we've got to be aware of AI.
Of course.
In optimizing recruitment and retention. Do you have one particular experience that may be worthwhile to share?
I think that what I would pivot a little bit and like to share is just in the conversation you mentioned earlier, this shift from post-pandemic, right? Everything that's going on. And I think that is the reality of the growth of small business these days. Because post-pandemic, people really had that opportunity to reflect and think about their own value set, think about what was important to them, the kind of work that they wanted to do, the type of work, the type of skills that they really wanted to shift to. And I would say that is absolutely my experience. I was in a Fortune 100 oil and gas company for many years, and the beauty of that is that you get to move around a lot. You get to have an opportunity to have tons of experiences. The downside to that is that as you move, you potentially get further and further away from what you actually want to do. And that was my reality. So coming into small business ownership and really being my own boss gives me the opportunity to really hone in on my value set and what I know that I am adding most value in to other folks. So for what that means for recruitment and retention is really understanding how to leverage skill sets that are different than what you might see on a resume or what you might be looking for specifically in a kind of standard crafted job description, right? So the beauty of being able to move around and leave a corporate space or to come into a small business environment is that you really have that opportunity to look at skill sets that might be different. We call them transferable skills, right? In one job description, it might give a very specific task that somebody's trying to complete. But in a small business, the reality is we are doing all things, right? So that skill set could translate to something completely different within your business. So I would say as a small business owner, it's really important to be open-minded about the kinds of skills that you're looking for from people, the way that you want them to work, and then also creating the environments where you are building that environment of trust, knowing that you're going to be able to develop people on the job, that you're going to be able to really support people in their growth, as well as the growth of your business at the same time.
No, I appreciate that very much. Turning to you, Dean, obviously we all wish we could stop and do the 2-year course. Perhaps you talk about the 2-year degree and then maybe some takeaways of what you've seen, that there's some tangible ideas for those wanting to focus on the retention and workforce creation.
Thank you for that. So
Yes.
I think the exciting part of the work that we're doing is we're being disruptors right now. So the word of innovation that's in the Colby School is we get to disrupt a space that's already been here, but we want to do it differently. Everyone doesn't want a 4-year degree. And for those of us who are fighting for students and personnel in the same pond, we have to make sure that we're being innovative, meeting students where they are, and taking them where they want to go. So actually, my school that I founded was born out of an innovation project. And so my president came to me and said, you know, UST, we are so interested and so engaged in a market of students that we're missing. Let's found a college and let's think about what's important. So as Juliet said, the hot trends are technology, healthcare, business, but also manufacturing, construction. And so we've developed 9 degrees that start students at a 2-year, but we've had such success, they're now matriculating into our 4-year degrees, which we're very pleased about. What's exciting about the 2-year degree is we're meeting people where they are. We need convenience. Well, guess what? All of my programs, except for one, are online. They are asynchronous, which I went to, for my undergrad, I went to University of Houston, go Cougs, and I had to sit in front of a professor. Well, now with the technology and innovation, you can take your courses online at your leisure. So we're meeting people where they are, especially those who have to take care of their families or who have children who work multiple jobs. So we want to make sure that the time is not a barrier. The other piece is affordability. We've heard students say, higher ed is really expensive, and I really want a great education, which I know we are the very best at offering a faith-based education that's at different price points. And so I always tell students, we don't want this to be a barrier. We're gonna find you some money, we're gonna write some grants, you can do work study, but if you wanna be at the University of St. Thomas, we want you to be here too. And the third thing is looking at the market. We want to make sure that those of you who are employers, we want to give you the kind of students that you need. So when people ask me, well, what's your 2-year degree looking like differently from some of your peers or aspirants? Well, a few things. A, we offer the wraparound support services. So as soon as you come in, we're making sure that if you've been a pandemic, stay at home, or you're wanting to reskill, maybe there's some soft skills that you're lacking. Well, guess what? We're gonna give you a coach who will stay with you from the minute that you begin up until your graduation. Number 2, if you need time off, we will truncate your courses. If you want to accelerate because your job wants to ensure that you are reskilled for an opportunity, we give you that opportunity, we give you those skills. But we wanna make sure that we're offering something that you're not going to receive. We also build ethical leaders. So one of my degrees that I'm very proud of is cybersecurity. So we want to know, what does a cybersecurity analyst look like that has a degree or thought behind ethics, morals, making good decisions if you're going into that space. Drug and alcohol counseling. We've seen a lot of people that have been impacted by the pandemic. Lots of students are saying, I have anxiety or I'm suffering from depression. And so we started a degree to offer and to support those students. So we're looking at what our employers want. My husband is a technologist and he says, well, Nicole, we need people who work well, think well, and work well with others, who can also relate to others, who are self-aware, and who can manage their emotions. And you know what that is? Emotional intelligence. So what I found is you can be really smart, you can be really gifted, but we're also tapping into your emotional intelligence. Employers want to make sure that you can get the job done and work well with others. So we're really proud of that because those are some things that we see that's changing the goal and that's changing the level set of what you all as employers are looking for in your employees. And so that's what we're really proud of in Colby, because we're a 2-year degree program, but we're also very quick to pivot. So talking about AI, I'm an old school professor. Again, I had to sit in front of, my professors when I was being trained, and now I've learned really quickly that ChatGPT and AI are some things that we have to embrace. And so as I shared technology, and you shared it too, it changes on a dime. So we've had to incorporate, what does AI look like at University of St. Thomas? So it's I'm looking at a term paper, and Sofia, I don't know if these are your words. They're really great words, but I want to make sure that these are your words. And so we want to give students that opportunity because it is instant feedback and it's a lot of wonderful things, but we also want to make sure that we're toggling ethically on what's correct. And so automation is important, but the human skill set is just as important. So we're looking at AI. My husband said, you got to stay in front of the game, Nicole. You might want to think about doing a certification in AI. So that's the next thing that we're looking at. So making sure that we pivot and look at seeing what you all need.
Well, that's incredible. That's a good commercial. So you can do the degree at HCC, and if you don't have time, like most of us do not, there's the certification. Dean, you have said so much I could respond to. I will say one thing that you referenced, which I think is just important, that there is no doubt that there was the epidemic within the pandemic.
Sure.
The crisis, the mental health ramifications of the luxury, yet, as with everything, there's an opportunity, yet there's a challenge of being at the screen, of not having the human interaction, the positive and negative. And I will say, obviously it's a bit more sobering. We do have to be cognizant for women particularly. There's an entire focus on the Global Gender Gap Report. For your edification, if this is something that's important, out of the World Economic Forum, there's an entire insight report talking about, yes, there may be amazing things about the luxury to do everything online, but for women, and men as well, there are ramifications of never leaving that computer, a screen, never having that opportunity, and entrepreneurial gap as well. So I think, as with everything, I surmise the ideal would be a hybrid opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure from your perspective, if you could have everyone on campus, you would. It's just a matter. Yeah. And I will say one thing, and I think that, and I promise you, turn it right back to Juliet, always has words of wisdom. I'll say as follows. It's interesting. I was thinking about the issue of how do you determine if they're your words or not? This is, my youngest is at Rice right now, and what's interesting, what Harvard started doing, you're probably cognizant of it, there's a new interest in having examinations that are oral. Which makes complete sense. How do you avoid the fact that someone is not pulling up information? Sure. You literally have them come before you and start speaking. What do you know? Yes. Share it. So the upside, though, I see this as an opportunity, though, because if you do engage, if you do appreciate the value of your oration skills, that can be something. And I know, Juliet, you're salivating to and I'm giving you the floor. But in your floor, I want you to cover how perhaps your board and your institution can help our colleagues that were kind enough to be with us in the recruitment and retention strategies. Take it away, but cover that, please.
Well, this will be in relation to what was just stated. So how many of us, back in the day, it was common to have a first job, right? Yeah. You worked with your family, you might have been a babysitter, you might have worked in that. And so nowadays, there's been kind of a crisis in young people having work-based opportunities, right? So when I was at the city of Houston, I had an opportunity to work with the mayor to design the Hire Houston Youth Program, right? And we had about $1.5 million, and we hired about 450 young people to be able to work at the city, and they worked in various departments. It was fantastic. I told folks I loved working with the students over the summer. But we also wanted to expand the opportunities. So we worked with companies that says, can you hire a young person over the summer? Just one or two, maybe one. And see, how that impacts your business. But the business had to invest the funding in that individual. And we know that a lot of young people, it's challenging for them to do an unpaid work experience. And oftentimes in some fields, there is no paid work experience. In nursing, for instance, the higher ed coordinating board had to change the rules to introduce an apprenticeship program so that way nurses in training could get paid. So it's rethinking the way the system is working. Well, now that I'm at Workforce Solutions, we have this year $8 million that we can invest in work-based learning opportunities should you have a position that's open for a young person to work with you. If they're eligible for the funding and you want to be a part of this program, we're launching a youth employment opportunity experience. And I tell folks that'll give a young person at least 6 weeks of paid employment, earning between $13 to $15 an hour. And then you don't have to take money out of your business, but you do still need to take the time and being able to coach and mentor, and that's your investment in the future. Because young people, as I was saying, is like if they're stuck behind a computer all day and they're hybrid learning, how are they going to learn how to talk? How are they going to learn how to answer the phone? How are they going to learn to serve your clients well? What are they going to know about customer experience? I've seen some young people, they're great on paper, fantastic on paper, and then they come in, I'm like, oh my goodness.
Well, and all of us, whatever we're doing, whether it's the bank that's sponsoring others, we're all about sales and service.
Yes.
So Juliet, you promised one of the websites or one of the appropriate links you're going to give.
Yes.
It's going to be for that opportunity.
Yes, wrksolutions.com. And so we're also building a youth portal. And so these are new initiatives and efforts that we're doing.
And I will make sure that we will work on putting something together.
Can I just add that?
Because I want our other two colleagues to speak.
Sure, let me just add really quickly. I think
Yes,
that is a
please.
beautiful, beautiful solution. And one of the things that I have recognized as a small business owner, and even just coming here, is awareness of a lot of the solutions that are available. So reach out to your Workforce Solutions Board and physically ask them about what's available. I have
The
learned
awareness
that
of the
that's-
resources.
yeah,
Doctor, you're exactly right.
Absolutely.
Give us a sense in terms of, I hate to say this, we're having so much fun. I almost need your closing remarks.
I know we're
you're not
getting
at
so
the
close.
courthouse.
I see a question. Do we
Well,
have
if-
time? What is the minimum age requirement for these apprenticeship
So
programs?
for our programs for the work-based learning, it starts at 16. But there are some, but you have to have some very specific jobs that qualify for young people that are 14. There are certain criteria. They can't be next to an oven. They get safety requirements and things along those lines.
And I think what we should do, though, for Q&A, just to be mindful and get everything in, why don't we allow everyone, Doctor and Dean, to have some closing remarks, and then what we'll do is we can all stay a few minutes and answer some questions. What have there's so much that could be covered. We all worked very hard at all these questions, but had too much to share along the way. What have you not had the luxury to say that you want to share with our colleagues?
So much. But I will just say, as a small business owner, one of the things that I think is hardest to make time for and to prioritize is your own development. So even the opportunity, the time to look for the resources to help you is hard, right? Because I'm busy. If I don't work, I don't make money. So to take the time to find the solutions is really important. Also, the time to prioritize your own development. So when you were speaking of the apprenticeship programs and the ability to bring in youth into your workforce, that's also a really great opportunity for you yourself to grow as a leader, right? So how are you really learning your supervisory skills, the ability to coach and to mentor others, and all of these things? Your network is your net worth is absolutely a huge piece of that as well. So being at something like this, finding opportunities within your chambers, many of the chambers like the Greater Houston Women's Chamber offer so many free resources and courses, and whether they're online or in person. Making that time to go and do the networking events is huge as well. The other piece that I would add is that if you have the capacity to become engaged civically within your environment, it's huge, right? So thinking about nonprofit boards or other opportunities on different boards where you can network and meet with other people and have some conversations that are outside of your business, but still help you to connect the dots of how work happens is going to be critical as well. Because as what I have learned as a small business owner as well is that it is very easy to put your head down and work really hard. And then you get into that same mentality of being Latina, growing up in the corporate space. I had that very same mentality of I'm going to put my head down, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to be recognized, and things are going to happen. And we all know that stuff doesn't work that way, right? So same within the small business environment or within the environment that, of companies is the more you focus so hardcore on your business and work to get things done operationally, the more you miss what's going on around you. And business and the economy and everything is changing so quickly that you really have to take the time to take a step back and just be engaged in the environment and around you.
I think, and as I turn it, and Dean, to you, there's no doubt it's what you learn is commensurate with what you earn. And I will say just very briefly on the engagement, I think on a litany of levels, I've served over, and I think many of us have, 20 nonprofit boards over the last 25 plus years. And the upside is it's the networking, it's the exposure, it's a substance that you learn from different fields, and it can be economically rewarding, just long term in terms of the business opportunities that you have, but it also gives you a sense of how the negotiation table for everything it's not right there. You cannot myopically look at something. And the more exposed you are, I think you then end up being a better entrepreneur, a better business leader, a better employee, or a better employer, is at least my perspective. Dean, some of your final thoughts.
Really quickly, so I want to say to the audience, be willing to pivot, and you're never too old or too young. So my oldest student is 65, and my youngest is 17. And, I love what Melanie said about developing and pouring into yourself. So one of the things that I'm so proud about the work that I'm privileged to do, I get to do this work. I don't say I have to do this work. I get to do this work, is I get to make opportunities and I get to unlock people's potential. And so I love meeting people who decide to say, you know what, I'm in banking. I love being a banker, but I've always loved technology too. So how can I merge both of those worlds? And so we look at that. I've started a new certification academy with Cisco where you can get your certification, because let's not forget the value also employers having people with certifications where you can stack your credentials to make sure that you're more marketable. So you might have graduated with one degree, but you have an interest and a passion in something else. And so I get really, really excited about being a Dean of Innovation because we get to make that happen for you. And so I want to be really, really clear in saying it's never too late for anything. I love telling my students that I know the reason why I was put on this earth, and that's to make sure that other people have the best opportunity, and I'm going to help you get there. So if you're sitting in that audience and you're like, you know what, I like technology, I wonder what this would look like. Well, at University of St. Thomas, we have a fully online program that goes into a 2-year, that might go into a 4-year if you'd like to stay with us that long, even getting your PhD and other certifications. So don't ever be afraid of doing something different that you've always wanted to do, because life is short. Time is short, and so I believe that if you're sitting in the audience right now, you're not quite sure what you're here to do, let's have a conversation about that, because I think the exciting part of what I get to do is I get to unlock that potential. So that's my final word.
Well, and I'll say this, I think actually, looking at the audience, it reminds me of the grit, grind, and the gravitas. If you're here, you're willing to get up, walk out, and try to see what you can learn. So you clearly have the grit and the grind factor, and I think there's a gravitas that comes with that. So I commend you and thank you. Juliet, fellow Rice grad, I'm going to give you the true final words, because given what you do for a living, it's Gulf Coast Workforce Solutions. So with all due respect, I need some sort of a pithy, but powerful, but accurate solution on workforce retention as we end this great opportunity.
Well, it's like, I think the goal is for us to be able to make sure that we are addressing all of these dramatic changes that are happening, but building the workforce that you need specifically for your business. And I go back to the opportunity of designing and developing a work your own and building your own workforce, right? So when we look at those opportunities for the work-based learning experiences, the immersive learning experiences, the apprenticeship opportunity, we also have funds for on-the-job training, in which if you are able to host somebody for a certain period of time, we'll pay up to 50% of their salary. So there are different types of initiatives that we have, investments that the Texas Workforce Commission has available for you to help design and cultivate a future workforce for you that you can recruit and retain. And so the bottom line is, our community is much better when we have businesses that are thriving, so that way families can work with you and they can thrive as well. I thank you very much for participating today. Of course, we'll be here. Once again, go and visit www.wrksolutions.com, and we look forward to working with you.
But I will say this, we promise you we will deliver, and I'm looking at Brian, who's been from the governor's office, who's been terrific. By the way, some of us have known the governor since the 90s. So he actually wrote a letter for a recognition I got for Outstanding American many years ago. So you're working with someone formidable. We will, give us a bit of time, but we will put together a cheat sheet, and I say that in the best terms. Just if nothing else, the studies we've referenced, I'm gonna give the onus to them. I'm gonna start the round robin. I'm gonna send with my signature line. They're gonna augment it. and we'll get it to the governor's office, and when he can, he'll make sure it's available. We want to thank you. I'm a little bit jealous. We clearly were the nerdy ones. We did not do it. I promise you we could be fun. I feel like we should be doing a cheer at the end.
We should.
But you know what? 3 cheers
We have
for
to be
you.
louder than that room next door now.
Thank you for being here, and we will be here for a few minutes, and much success, onward and upward. Happy holidays.